all, and welcome to another exciting episode of Down Home Dirt, the show where we dive deep into the journey of entrepreneurship with those who took the plunge and all the ups and downs that come with it. I'm your host, Dusta, and today we are joined with Jen Shepard. She is a mom of two, she works full time, and she has a success coaching business. How do you do it all?
Well, I don't. So I would love to emphasize when you try to take on too much, the best advice I love to give is debunking work-life balance, right? So everybody looks around and thinks that everyone else has it figured out, right? And then when we're not good at balancing and prioritizing all the things, we think that we're incomplete, right? And that we're insufficient. What I would love to emphasize to everybody is you can't do it all, right? So you really have to learn what are the priorities in your life. I love to use this analogy. It's so disgusting, and I just have to say it because it's gross. But like juggling all the balls, right, in the air. I try to say spinning plates, but you look and you assess which of them are glass and which of them are rubber. And what I mean by that is the glass ones, and bear with me, I am losing my voice, so apologies, I sound so terrible. But when you look at all the priorities in your life, you have to identify which ones are rubber, meaning which ones can you let go, knowing that they will eventually come back up, and which ones are glass. Glass being the most important things that allow you to show up authentically yourself, but also find joy. Because so many of us, I'm sure you interview people all the time or you meet them that feel like they're in this hamster wheel of life
All the
and
time.
they're just chasing a life that they don't even know what they want. Or you just heads down. We're in a grind culture. That's the way we were raised, right? We were attributing, a lot of us attribute value to what we accomplish. And in doing that, we're chasing this life with our heads down and not even looking up. So what happens? We get burnt out, we get exhausted, overwhelmed. I read a statistic the other day that said 75% of people with young children are too busy to enjoy life.
Guilty.
How crazy is that? 75% are too busy to enjoy life. So hearing that makes me want to get out there and help people, and realize like you can pursue your passions no matter how many there are and still find joy and peace and enjoying the journey. Where I think we get it wrong is that we go 150%. We treat every priority like they're glass, right? That we can't drop any of them.
That's true.
So it's taking the time to really sit down and look at everything we're doing. And I've learned this the hard way of you can probably relate to this. So I used to be the yes mom, right? So on a given weekend, I would go to like 4 birthday parties. We would run late to literally every single one of them. So I'm like dragging my kids, we're rushing, we're running late because I'm the cool mom, right? I want them to have the best weekend ever. And then we get to Sunday and they would have crazy meltdowns. And it hit me, and I'm like, you know what? This is you, right? Like you're trying to do all these things. You're trying to say yes to everything. And that's when I realized the impact not only did it have on me, but my kids. As parents, I think we don't often reflect on the outcomes and the consequences of what we do and the decisions that we make. Have you seen that?
Unfortunately, I understand that
Yeah.
100%, and I also have ADHD on top of all of that, so I'm trying to do everything because saying no makes you feel like a failure,
Yes.
and that's not what we want to do. It's not what we're representing anymore.
Yeah.
So I have been exposing my ADHD life and being like, yeah, my house is a complete mess. I don't care.
Yeah.
My things aren't put away. I have what's called organized chaos, and my ex-husband was so funny. He named it I have a flat surface problem.
Oh,
Right? And
meaning
I was
what?
like, what does that mean? And he's like, anytime you see a flat surface, all your ideas go out. And I was like,
I've never felt so seen in my entire life.
right? And I was like, oh, I never, thanks for pointing that out. So now I'm trying to be a little bit more
Yeah.
conscientious of that because
Yeah.
you can only put up so many freaking card tables in the
Yeah.
house, which I've done. I'm guilty.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, right, is saying no almost makes us think that we're a failure. So
Hmm.
completely rebranding failure is like one of my favorite topics. The first thing, we also think that saying no disappoints people. But if we're surrounding ourselves with the right people, the people that actually appreciate and allow us to be the authentic self and see what we're doing, they don't think negatively of saying no, right? They respect us for setting boundaries. I reached out to a girl the other day to get coffee. We were supposed to meet up on a Sunday, and I texted her, Saturday night, just making sure that we're good. And she replied back and she was like, "Hey, I'm so sorry, but I have to pack for this trip. I won't be able to show up as my true self if we do it. So do you mind if we push it back?" And I was like, oh my gosh, first of all, good job.
I'm
Like,
taking
kudos to
that.
you. And I received that and I just felt so proud of her. And that was the first thing I said. I was like, thank you for setting boundaries for yourself, right? Because she recognized that if she said yes, she wouldn't show up as who she needed to be. She would be low on energy. She'd be stressing about not getting done what she needs to. Then she wouldn't show up the person she needed to be for her family. So, looking at situations and identifying, does this serve me or does it not? But to your point, if you're surrounded by the right people, they're not going to think negatively of you for saying no. They're going to be admire you and be proud of you. And maybe it'll teach them to do the same thing.
I feel like as a society, especially women, we have a hard time saying no in general because, like you were saying, we want to do it all.
Yeah.
And I personally, I do a podcast, I own a business, I'm a
Yeah.
single parent, right? So I've got all of these things. And on top of that, I have a son with autism. So
Mhm.
and he's an adult, he's on his own. So we're really proud of him.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry. But he's only 19, and so but there's still things that I have to do for him, and
Mhm.
I feel you on that. And so sometimes I have to be like, no, my priority is my children, or my
Yeah.
priority is my business. And or I've learned to say, unfortunately, I am unable to. And then that way
Love
it
that.
doesn't feel like I'm just saying no, I can't do it,
Right.
which kind of is how when you write no in a text, it just looks like that. It looks like you're being
Yeah.
like no.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. Well, first of all, kudos to you. I've had the pleasure of meeting you for coffee and learning about your family, and like your children are incredibly
Thank you.
talented and like all of the you're doing it all too, right? It's not Jen Shepard and working full time and doing all these things. There's so many women just like you out there doing it, right? So really leaning into how do you find those pieces of joy and incorporate them into your life and only prioritize what serves you and your family, right?
That's really hard. So
Yeah.
could you give us some pointers on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So staying first things first is you need to really, really, really lock into who you are. I don't believe that a lot of people know who they are at the deepest level that you need to. So really, I always use the analogy that you go on dates and you fall in love with somebody else, right? After, I don't know, days, months, years. Once you've seen their true authentic self in that deepest level, at that point your heart accepts them and loves them. But why do we not do the same for ourselves? How often do we take ourselves on a date? How often do we have those, you think of like true love and the puppy love of the 2 a.m. conversations and all of those pieces of really getting to know people? We don't do that with ourselves, right? We jump out of bed, we're right on the hamster wheel, we're surviving, we're trying to people please, right?
Guilty.
Huge. Yes, all of
Very
us
guilty.
are. We're trying to do everything for everybody else without pouring into ourselves. So, step one, you have to know yourself at a very deep level. And then once you align with your core values and who you are, it makes making decisions a lot easier because you can say, yes, this does serve who I am, or no, it does not. Second thing is you got to know where you're going. What is the legacy that you want to leave behind? We joked setting up for this about like
Oh,
lessons
guys.
from people before they die, and I always joke, I'm like, this is so morbid, but I would say the biggest gems of everything I've learned in the last 16 years have been from people right before they die.
I agree with you, and
Yeah.
I love that so much. And I know that it's morbid, but like
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with the idea of that. What am I leaving when I die? Right. And so my
Yeah.
whole thing was is my love language for my kids is food.
Yeah. Love
I
that.
I do this thing with them where I make them a really big breakfast on Saturday morning, right? And the second they take a bite, I'm like, "Thank you for accepting the bribe. Now here's what I need you to do."
Here's your chore list. Yeah.
Right, exactly, exactly. And or they come down like when they were little, like, "Oh, it's so good," and I'm like, "Cool, now we get to cook." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Mother," and I'm like, "Yes, I get that," right? So I started this cooking channel where
Yes.
I'm cooking meals for my children on YouTube, so that when I pass, like if they want to
Yeah.
go, have Thanksgiving dinner, or if they want to make their favorite, whatever it is, like it's there for
Oh
them.
my God, you're gonna make me cry. That's so
I like
sweet.
I'm already tearing up. So
Oh,
we're gonna cry in this episode, guys.
yes. Well, first of all, that is such a huge step for you to recognize that alone. There are so many people, again, that hamster wheel.
Hmm.
How many people are really sitting down and saying, what is the legacy that I want to leave behind? So, spoiler alert, I have a coaching call tonight where my clients are writing their eulogy. Literally. We're going through it
Interesting.
and we're writing it out because if you're not in tuned with the legacy that you want to leave behind, then how do you know what to say yes to and what to say no to, right? You get invites and you really have to sit down and say, hey, although this may be fun, birthday party number 3, or could I watch a movie with my kids, right? What is bringing me joy? Does this align to who I am and where I'm going? Then it's a hell yes. Anything else,
Eh,
or it's a not now, right? It doesn't have to be a no forever. It can be, hey, it's just not in the time for me at this moment. So let me ask you, what is the legacy you want to leave behind?
that's a really good question. It's something that I have been thinking about a lot lately, especially with my business and everything. I don't want to be known as the mom who is constantly at work, right? I, oh, excuse me, I'm getting a little,
I'm giving you my hoarseness.
yeah, it's this ragweed that's going on. Anyways, that's a whole other story. I just got an allergy pill for that. But the legacy that I'm looking to leave behind is somebody that was helpful to the community, helpful to my children, and honestly had a good time. I don't
Yeah.
want to be the stressed out one that was trying to do that so much that I wasn't fun.
Yeah.
So just making sure that they have a good time and they have good memories.
Yeah.
Because I don't have great memories of growing up. So
Well, I think you're doing an amazing job. I mean,
thank
based on
you.
what I've heard and what we've talked about, that you're checking all the boxes. And again, like being aware and knowing where you're going makes making those decisions so much easier. So locking in to your legacy and what you're wanting to leave behind. And then equally important is breaking down the barriers that are all in your head, right?
That is
The
so hard.
limiting beliefs, the mom guilt is a huge one. I have segments ripping up mom guilt, right? And it's hard. It is difficult as a working mother, right? Is how do you show your kids that you are grinding it out, they're hustling, that you're doing all the things that you need to do, but not taking time away from them? And I always say we focus so much on the time we don't have with our kids. We need to instead
It's
focus on
true.
being present in the moments that we have. It's always like, oh, I'm going to this workout class. I should be going to dinner, right? And all of these things, but they're all in our head. They're not other people saying them to us. And that goes for fear of failure, fear of not being enough, fear of what if I fail? What are people going to think about me? All of these, what I call is their irrational future outcomes, right? That are probably never going to happen. But the crazy part is we let them make us avoid decisions. And there becomes, you probably know people like this, where there's a cognitive dissonance between who they are and who they see in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
How many people do you know? Maybe it was your myself in previous relationships who morphed into the person that your significant other wanted you to be.
Guilty.
And then you start, but you never know until after or somebody tells you, right? It's so hard to recognize in the moment, but having that awareness to say, hey, does this align with my core values? And if not, then you just reshift and reshape and rebrand, right?
Absolutely. I went through a very painful divorce and I didn't really know who I was like when I was coming out of it. And I
Yeah.
was like, who am I? What do I like to do? And I realized in that moment that I have some lingering issues of where I do shapeshift and I am to whoever they want me to be, but that's not who I am. That's not true to me, which also explains why the relationship doesn't work. So I
Yeah.
needed to do some very, very long healing journey. It's, been about 4 5, gosh, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Every time I do math on this podcast, I'm all like, geez, it's been a while. But I do want to piggyback on what you were saying
Yeah.
about people think, people don't think about you. And if you
No.
ever want someone, do you want proof of this? Start a podcast, start a YouTube channel, and then see how many people don't care. Not saying that they don't care about this, but they're not judging me. They're listening and supporting. So it's
Yeah.
one of those things when you start putting yourself out there, you start realizing that was all in my head.
I know. That is probably one of the biggest barriers I've seen is what are people going to think about me? And here it goes. A, the right people admire you. They're not judging you.
Mhm.
Second of all, people are too focused on themselves to be caring
It's so
what other
true.
people think, right? Like we are as humans, we are naturally think of ourselves. So in those moments, and then I always say the haters, let them hate, right? That means you're doing something
Hmm.
well and they're jealous that you're achieving something that they know they never will. So it shows you that you're doing the right thing. But so many times we let that fear of what if I fail? What will people think of me? Judging hold us back. Not even trying. One thing you mentioned that I love this quote, if you work with me, I like to say it all the time, but there was a woman named Bonnie Ware who was a hospice nurse. And she, once again, people before they die, she interviewed people right before they passed and said, what is your number one regret? The number one regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself, not a life that others had wanted me to live. I mean,
Yes,
full
I
body
was gonna
goosebumps
say,
every time I hear
yes.
that, and I've said it a million times, but how many times do we go through life without even knowing that we are putting on masks and we are showing up as somebody that's not true to ourselves? The root of personality is persona, which in Greek refers to masks that we wear. So in my coaching program, we peel off all the masks, all the t-shirts, as I call them, air quotes,
I like that better.
of these they're t-shirts that they were put on us younger. So it could have been something somebody said to us when we were younger, could have been a past experience, trauma, could have been societal expectations. And we've worn them our entire life. A lot of times we don't even know we're wearing them. The crazy part, they're not even true.
Yes, and that is something I feel like the older you get, the more you start realizing that too is like I don't know, this is just something I've heard. I don't know if it's true, but like once you hit 30, you
Yeah.
just start either not caring about
Yeah.
those things, right? Or you start realizing like that is not who I am.
Yeah.
So either way they still go together, the hand in hand. And that was kind of me when I hit 30. I was like, "Oh, I am a stay-at-home mom. I have 3 kids and that's it. That's period. That's full stop."
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not all I am."
I know.
And it took me a little bit and a lot of therapy to
Yeah.
realize that I needed to live my life. And I heard that quote and I was like, that's when I just started doing the things I wanted to do. I don't care if I look
Absolutely.
crazy. That's fine.
Let them, because guess what, you're enjoying life and that's all that matters, right? Is are you living a life where you get to the end of it and feel fulfilled? And I think so many times, especially women, we attribute our worth and our value to things that are completely out of our control, like the roles we play, right? So a lot of us attribute our worth to how we are as a mother. And I always say, any parent who knows you could be the best mom in the world and your toddler is still gonna have a meltdown because you had to cook the chicken and they couldn't eat it raw. Or you could be the best wife in the entire world. You have one little blow up and poof, now you're a terrible person, right? So how often, or maybe we're attributing our worth and our value to the performance of our business. So if we have a slow quarter or if we're not performing well, who are we? Right now, we're terrible. So, really stripping away all of the things that we are associating our value to, and something you're on social media, you probably see this or have experienced it yourself. I know I have, attributing our value and our self worth to the performance of our content.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. How many likes, how many comments, how many views did our content get? We spend hours, at least I do,
same.
goofy ass reels, right? I'll put it out into the world. And as soon as I hit send, I'm like, oh, regret, regret. I hate it. Like, pull it down, and then it'll get like, I don't know, not a lot of air quotes around, not a lot. And what I've really had to work with myself on is, you know what, Jen? The things that matter, they don't track that on Instagram, right? It's
Mm-mm.
about the quality of the DMs, the relationships with the people that you're building. How about impacting people in a positive way, right? You're out there, you're putting your message out, you're interviewing people, you're doing amazing.
Thank you.
And it's really hard to sometimes not get wrapped up into the performance of the content.
That is true. I actually saw something about that. I think it was
Yeah.
on TikTok, and they had mentioned about, oh, if you only get 27 likes, you don't think that's a lot, but if 27 people showed up at your door, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to tell you what I did.
Yeah.
I graduated high school in 2004, and our graduating class was as big enough to write out in the football field 2004, and they took an aerial photo, right? So I was thinking to myself, okay, what is the graduating class? Like, how many people were there? I'm sure it was over like 1,000 people,
Yeah.
right? And so that's where I started using my comparison to.
Mm,
Instead of being like, I need millions of people, I'm like,
yeah.
no, I just need my graduating class. That's
Yeah.
my thing right there.
Yeah. Or how about one, right?
Yeah.
I create these goofy videos, like totally embarrassing myself. And I'm like, you know what? If I can just help one person, then I did my job, right? Is as soon as I get a comment that's like, hey, I really needed to hear that today. Boom. So really being intentional about why you're creating content and what's the reason behind it? Is it creating it to create it? And same with your podcast, right? Why are you having the interviews? Are you just having them to put your face on the internet? No. You're having them because you care, right? You want to get people's stories out. You want to meet incredible people that you're interviewing, right? So really locking into that. But I'm sure you have your reasons for doing it.
Well, yes, and they have evolved since I started.
Yeah.
And so when I started, I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. I feel alone in my journey, and I know there are other people that feel the same. So like, and I was having these conversations, like obviously without a camera, and I was
Yeah.
like, these are great. This
Yeah.
is good information. So I wanted to put it out there. But as I have done this, I've been in this for 6 months at this point. It is therapy to me. The amount of people that I have met, the lessons that I have learned, I am hoping to share that with other people as well. So they,
Yeah.
like I tell my kids, I've done all the hard stuff so you don't have to. I'm hoping that I'm doing this for other people as well.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you are, right? So good for you. It's huge kudos for putting yourself out there. It's hard to be in front of people and to continue and being consistent. There's probably days where you don't want to show up, but you do. And the people that you meet, the biggest thing that you can do to,
Just making sure that
oh,
the
yeah,
power stays on, guys, because
oh, yeah,
we're going to talk about that real quick. Let me just
yeah,
stop you right there.
please. Yeah.
So, talking about being messy and talking about not knowing what you're doing. So I arrived here. Not only was I 15 minutes early, and I was kudos to me because everybody knows me, like I'm never on time,
And I was not ready. So, yes.
which is great because I was like, cool, like that'll give me time to set up. So I go to set up, and I forgot a very trivial part of my equipment, and I was just freaking out, and I was like, oh my god, how am I supposed to do this? But it's that resilience to know that I can work through it, and I have another program in which I can do it, and it was fine, but it was just hilarious.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make sure this stays on.
Well, let's emphasize one of my biggest pillars is life is messy. Show it, embrace it, have fun with it, laugh at it, right? Is I help moms overcome mom guilt all the time by publicizing the mistakes that I make as a mother. And you watched my speech at the conference.
Yes, can we talk about it? Because that was like
Absolutely.
one of those things that, like, as I'm watching all these things happen, I was like, you made me renew my sense in my podcast because I was like, she's bigger than I am, and she's like doing things that I'm wanting to do. Let's talk about that. What
Yeah.
happened?
In the mom guilt section, that was okay. So, walking through mom guilt, first of all, I started this section off by bringing my 5-year-old on stage with me. Now, I think it's really important for kids to see the end result, right? She sees mom work. I mean, that conference took 9 months of planning, multiple meetings a week. She saw the work. I wanted her to see the results of it. How often the kids get to see that, right? They just see the parents grinding. So I wanted her to be there, A, to see the end result, and B, to see mommy do hard things too. So I brought her on stage with me. I said, Riley, I'm really scared. I'm really nervous. Will you help me stay brave? And she stood to the occasion. So, first of all, absolutely loved having her up there just because I think it's important, just as life is messy, adults do hard things too. And I think it's a great lesson for kids of they think we have it all figured out. The same way we think other adults have it figured out.
Yes.
Nobody has it figured out. Nobody knows what we're doing. So being able to see that. And then of course cracking open mom guilt by getting on stage and making fun of myself and showing all the mistakes I've made. The amount of mistakes I've made since then, like I'm just like adding to my deck of things that I can talk about. But for example, dropping my child off at school with no shoes on. The fan favorite was when I showed pictures of the haircut that I gave my son. Don't recommend doing that. Um, and then another fan favorite was I have a photo album in my daughter's bedroom. It's a baptism photo album, and it still has a stock photo in it. And I was like, y'all, Riley is almost 6 years old. That is how long we have been staring at someone else's child in her bedroom. And then, of course, throughout the photo, there's also one in my son's room with some like stock photo children in it. But like, since then, I've dropped Carter off without shoes on. I went to drop Riley off at school the other day to find out school's closed all week. Didn't know that. So I put that out there. I laugh about it because I'm like, look, we're all out here just trying to figure it out. If I can get up here and emphasize the things I'm doing that aren't going well, then you can too. Or at least you can feel better about the things that you're making. We're human. We make mistakes. We forget things. We forget pieces and parts, and like just embracing it and saying, you know what, we're going to figure it out and we're not going to get upset about it and we're just going to trudge forward.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
she even asked me last night, hey, is there any equipment you need? I was like, no, I got this completely. I come here, I was like, I need all the equipment. So, you know what? And I also last night was very tired, and I sent her the form because you have to fill out a form. That way we can like advertise your podcast episode, right? I forgot to attach it. And she's like, nothing was sent. And I was like, well, that's embarrassing. So I have been being messy for the last 2 days, and that's okay. I'm gonna forgive myself. I'm not gonna feel any type of way because you're not judging me.
No.
You're like, I'm the same. Who
But it,
cares?
but it makes me feel better too, right? Because I'm like,
Right.
oh my God, I'm not the only one who attaches stuff and doesn't actually attach it to the point where now my computer will be like, you said the word attach. Did you mean to attach something? Because you
We're
didn't.
gonna have to figure out that setting for me because whew.
The amount of times, but it normalizes, right? Is like, let's all stop pretending like we have it figured out. I will always say, everyone's like, how do you do it all? I'm like, I don't. I don't. My house is a total disaster. You've seen it. Like, car, absolute mess. Like, there are pieces of me, but to my point, that's a rubber ball. So it's not a priority. That's not one that's glass to me. And my friends come over and they know that, right? Like, I'll have a Halloween flag up until February, and like that's just Jen being Jen, right? And but I'm showing up each day, and I say this, like, if I can give any advice, spend your time doing meaningful things with the people that you love. That is what life is about. And again, circling back to people before they die, it's not the bank statements or the trophies or the awards or the titles that you ask for. It's the people, the loved ones. That's who you spend your last couple days with. And I just encourage you, we touched on this before, is the network. Who are you surrounding yourself with to lift you up, to make you feel authentically yourself? So once you find yourself, how are you leaning into it and how are you continuing to show up in that version and surrounding yourself with people doing the same? So you've probably met people in your life where you just don't vibe, right? And you're just like, you're a good person, but you're just not my deep, what I call as my front row. Or I heard this the other day.
I like that.
I heard this the other day and I was started laughing. They called it hide the body friends.
Yes.
I was like, okay, yeah, I see that. Okay. But who are those people? I always joke like your sweatpant messy bun friends, your I don't have to tidy my house friends. These are the friends that you can joke when your kids pee their pants friends. Like those people who you're like, this is me. I'm 15 minutes late. I'm messy. My hair is half uncurled. Like this is who I am. And when you find those people that really appreciate that, I mean, those are your ride or dies, your forevers, and it just allows you to be messy and not feel bad about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think just being your authentic self will attract those, something that I'm going to be honest, was not being, because I didn't know who that was. And then I was afraid to lose people who I thought deserved to be in the front row, right? And I was like, that's not how this works at all. So I just started being my ADHD self who has gone through some shit. And I am attracting the correct people. And it's even happening with the podcast. It's happening in my real life. It's happening with my business. So be authentic.
Absolutely. It's all a law of attraction, right? You're calling in. And they always say, I love this quote of eagles are the only bird that can fly as high as other eagles. So if you are an eagle and you see another bird, you know it's another eagle. So how often are eagles dropping down and flying below just to be with those people? So recognizing when it's not right for you. And I think distancing from toxic people and relationships is very difficult. It's very difficult.
It is, and I will be the first person to say that it took me a good probably 35 years to separate from a very toxic relationship. And well, I don't want to say immediately I saw results, but it felt like that. It really did, because the second I didn't have the negativity and the toxicity, I was like, who am I? I'm free to be me. No one's judging me. Nobody's telling me who I can and can't be. It's great. And so I agree with you 100%. It's very hard.
But you did it, right? And you became yourself by going through something like that. Unfortunately, right? It came with some unpacking that you had to do. But let me ask you, how did you find yourself after going through that and probably are still processing it, right? But were there things that you did that allowed you to figure out who you authentically are?
Absolutely. All the things that I was afraid to do, I just started doing them, and I didn't really care. I was like, I don't give a shit. And then it was also the thing where I was like, if I don't do the things and figure out whether or not it's who I am or part of me, how do I know? So I started this whole process of elimination thing where I had all these ideas about who I thought I was.
And go. So I did have this little moment where I took this list of all the things that I thought about myself, things I wanted to do, things that were exciting, and I would try it. And then I was like, well, not me. So, for example, I love my daughter to death, but she was like, we need to go to a line dancing class. 15 minutes into this, I was like, first of all,
tap out.
I was the most uncoordinated human being, and I was like, and there's a mirror, so you have to see that, and you have to be okay with that. But I realized that, and I said, okay, and so I told my best friend, and she gave me the best advice ever. She goes, take your ass home, learn how to do it in your living room, and then go back, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, or don't go back, right?
Yeah, or don't.
I relate to that. My friend and I went to a step class the other day, and I think we actually went into like an advanced one. And it was really humbling. That's what I say. When you like walk out of, you're in an experience where every single person around you is really good at something and you sucked so much, which, emphasis here, everybody sucks when they first start out with something. We often compare our beginning to someone else's middle, and that's damaging. So allowing yourself to suck is another one of my core values of just fall down, be messy, right? But it is humbling when you're in these situations and you're like, oh my God. It would be one thing if everybody around me sucked, but like, it's just me. Like, I can't do this kick flop, fall around, twirl around, jumping and in rhythm, adding on top of that. It's similar to you. And then you got the mirror there. It's like just re-emphasizing.
Just like, And you know what made me laugh too is there's a lady there, and I have lupus, so like my joints hurt and I can't really move them. She has arthritis. She's got to be in her 60s. She's out there doing these high kicks, and she's like, "Are you good? Just stretch your knee out." And I was like, I need to go home and lay down." Like, this was absolutely embarrassing, but she didn't care, and she wanted to help me achieve. So like that's the other thing is like when you start being yourself. This lady didn't care that I was 30 years younger than her. She didn't give a shit about nothing. She was like, "You wanted to come here, you want help, let's do it."
I love that.
So,
and another thing to your point is, what we think we want may change, right? So it's this, first of all, more kudos to you for doing the work, right? To look and see like, hey, this is who I am. Let me try these new things. I absolutely love that. The trial and error. Let's see if it works, if it doesn't work. And I just, I encourage people to be okay if it changes, right? It should change. If you're continuing to evolve and better yourself, you should not be on a linear path. Your life should look like chutes and ladders, right? You go up, you get 4 steps, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. It's up, it's down, it's fall down, it's spin around, right? It's, are you in constant pursuit of what makes you happy? That's all that matters. So trying that class was amazing. And maybe you practice at home and go back again. Or maybe you're like, okay, cool, I tried that, and now I know that that's not for me. But how many of us pursue a career or a job thinking like, this is my dream job? I have before. I've worked 8 years to get to a position that I thought was my end-all, be-all, best thing in the world. And I got the job, and I was like, you know what? This isn't what I thought it was going to be, right? This isn't what I thought it was going to give me inside. But I checked the box, right? And now I know. So it's this constant exploration, which is exactly what you're doing. And I love that. What's next on the list to try?
Lots of things. I just wanted to piggyback on that. I laughed when you said that because my entire life I've always been a creative, and I never wanted to get like a real job. My dad's like, go to college and get a job and like work for the government, because that's what he did. Cool. And so I went to school for medical office administration. I wanted to be a medical biller and coder. Cool. I went and I spent over $1,000 doing the test, because if you fail, you got to redo it, right? I got certified. I got the job. I was there for 2 weeks. And I was like, this
ain't for me. No, but you know now, right? And good for you for leaving. There's so many. So I did work in the government, and let me tell you, it was a lot of people hating their job. They were clocking in the hours. They were waiting for their pension and waiting to retire. And I remember looking around and being like, oh my gosh, everybody is miserable here. Like, this is not where I want to be. So being able to recognize it and get out, because a lot of people, they just keep going. Remember the hamster wheel, right? They're just chasing this life. But identifying, hey, this isn't for me, and then finding what that is incredible.
It is. And I realized in that moment, like I said, I was there for 2 weeks, and I was like, I did the math, and I was like, okay, I'm making, X, Y, and Z per hour, and if I have to work 40 hours a week, right, that's only this much a year. And then I was like, there's a simpler way, right? And I'm not kidding you. I started a cleaning company, which a lot of people think, oh, like, you're, low class, whatever. And it's like, I don't think you seem to understand. I work very minimal, but I have all my bills paid. I have time off to spend with my kid. I am balancing the things, and I wasn't able to do that in this job that I just thought was everything to me, and I was going to be so great. Yeah, I clean toilets, and and
if you're happy and you're balancing and you're fulfilled, then screw anybody else that tells you anything.
Exactly.
So that's for them to deal with and process. So the fact that you've done that and you've scaled an amazing business and you're working with your daughter is amazing. Goals right there.
Yes, and so you ask what's next. So I get really excited and I jump into things, and that's part of the ADHD, and I am not going to apologize for it, because we don't do that anymore.
Yes.
So my daughter started a photography business.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm so excited, and I talked her into videography for this podcast, so like the it is what it is. Try to encourage her.
Right.
But I'm really excited for her, and I want her to have her own media company.
Yeah.
So I think what's next on the table is kind of jumping into doing more media production and photography and helping her grow her business.
And you can use what you've learned. Now, you've interviewed a lot of people. If you could give your daughter one piece of advice for building her business, personal or professionally, based on anything that you've learned in your interviews, what would it be?
It's something I say all the time.
Yeah.
Do it, and do it stupid.
Love it.
Like, who cares, again, what anyone thinks? You're learning. So if you go out there and you take 100 photos of something and you post them up and no one likes it, that's fine, cool. Now you have the experience. But if you don't go out there and get all the experience, you're not going to know what you like and what you're good at photographing and any of that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do it stupid, I'll be right here.
Be messy, fail, fall down, pick yourself up, and what is there to lose?
Nothing. And I always say that failure is the door to success, because if we don't fall down, how are we supposed to get back up?
Yeah. There was a quote that I forget who it was, so I'm not even trying to remember, but they said, we look at successful people all the time and we're like, oh, up on a mountaintop, they're so successful. And the people up there, like, this isn't a pile of success, this is a pile of failures. The difference is we're not buried under them, we're standing on top of them, we're letting them fuel us. But kind of reframing our concept of success and thinking that they're just like on this pedestal, and they're like, no, this was all mistakes. This is all failures but I just kept going. I reframed it and learned from it and then tried something else instead of burying under it and then moving on.
Or just giving up completely.
Yes.
I know that's a lot of us. My personal experiences in life, before I knew I had ADHD, I try something and fail, cool, that's not for me, whatever, walk away. But then once I learned I had ADHD, I went, is there another way that could be successful?
Love that.
So I had to learn to reframe that with lots of therapy.
That's amazing. I mean, that's incredible that you have that perspective and you're embracing something about yourself that you used to think of maybe in a negative way, right? You
Very
wore
much
that
so.
T-shirt and it affected you in a negative, you hid from it, right? You moved in different trajectories that didn't complement it, and you did the work to recognize, hey, this is a core piece of me. How do I surround myself with people that appreciate it and do tasks and build careers around skills that actually complement it? So that's amazing. A lot of people, they hide from these things. One of the biggest questions I ask people is, what about you what do you hide? What are you ashamed of? And then how do you teach yourself to love those things?
It's very hard. I'm going to be honest. Whenever I first started just being okay with it, I started realizing, first you do the research, right? You're out there and you're like, who else has this? Famous people, successful people. And then you start realizing that, like, oh, this is a superpower. This has nothing to do with failure. I failed because I was in the wrong environment.
Right.
So removing myself from that environment and then proceeding forward with things that work with it.
Yeah.
And being an entrepreneur works with ADHD. I mean, that's why I did this podcast. Like, we're big risk takers, and one of the things that a lot of people are afraid to do when they put themselves out there is take that risk. And see, I don't look at it like that. Other people will point it out to me, and I'll go, oh, so I should be afraid of that?
Yeah.
I wasn't. I didn't think about it. I just did it. But that's also why I'm where I'm at.
Absolutely. And you're going to continue to keep climbing because now you've tapped into it, right? I love that you said it's a superpower. That's amazing, right? Because now you can let it fuel you instead of letting it detract you. I have, I work with, stressed out, overwhelmed, high achievers, and a lot of times they will be like, I'm sorry, I'm a visionary. And I'm like, first of all, don't ever apologize for that. I think oftentimes we apologize for these capabilities that we have and these qualities that people automatically think are negative, and they apologize for them. And I'm like, no, girlfriend, that is a superpower, right? Being a visionary, being these things, it's just that you need to get focused, right, on having the dreams. Or I'm a dreamer, but my husband says that, I shouldn't, and I should just focus on one thing. No, absolutely not. You want to lean into those pieces of you. It's how do you cater to them in a way that advances you? Don't hide from it. Don't try to avoid it. Don't try to remove that from you, because then you're not becoming your authentic self. It's really leaning into, what are these beautiful pieces of me, these beautifully imperfect pieces. And I think so much, here we go, back to people before they die, is There was an incredible podcast episode Mel Robbins did with a hospice doctor. And he describes people right before they die. I've actually had, unfortunately, experienced this with my mother-in-law. I was with her when she passed. And the way he described it relates not only to people before they pass, but also to near-death experiences. And he says, which I can vouch for, they get a sense of calmness because for the first time in their life, they see themselves as beautifully whole. And at that moment, they realize that their entire life, they've been chasing things to make them feel complete, right? So I'll feel happy when I get the car, when I get the job, when I get married, when I have kids, whatever that is, we're constantly chasing, I'll be happy when. And he says right before you pass, you get this sense of fulfillment because you realize in that moment, you've been whole the entire time. I mean, that shit gives me goosebumps too. But how do we help people unlock that feeling now instead of waiting until before they die? And it's exactly that, right? It's learning who are you? You don't need anything else. It's really just showing up every day, doing what you love with the people that you love. And if you can do that and not worry about the noise around you of people and things that are said, and they're going to try to get you off course. But if you really focus on the signs that are meant for you, you're going to live a life. And what's crazy is I've done, have you done breathwork sessions? Like,
with Joss.
yes.
Yes.
Stop it, you did.
Love her. She's been on the podcast.
I love her.
And that's when I learned that not only through her, but I have what's called disordered breathing.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So now I have to do breathwork exercises to get myself I can't breathe correctly.
Okay, I'm glad you said that. You can hear my hoarseness. I have chronic hoarseness. I'm a voice coach I have to go to and go to voice therapy. I learned that I breathe wrong. I was like, wait, I'm 34. Why am I just finding out? And then it just goes back to this. Breathing is something we were never taught to do. We just do it out of the womb. And I never knew you could breathe wrong, first of all. But anyway, circling back to Joss, who is freaking amazing. I did one of her breathwork sessions, and it actually put me in a state where I experienced that feeling. Where, not to get woo-woo and go all into the details, but it was I related to it almost like a near-death experience because of the subconscious state it elicits. And I saw myself and my soul, air quotes, as beautifully whole. And I realized in that moment all these things I've been chasing, right? The career, the working all these hours and all these things. I had a moment when I got home that night, I was crying, just journaling everything that I had experienced. And I was like, I've been chasing the wrong things this whole time. All that matters is spending time with my kids, raising them to be fearless and take life by the horns and go for it and live authentically themselves, my family and my friends, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And if you can do those things, you don't need anything else. The car doesn't matter. The job doesn't matter. And you learn to love yourself. In 16 years of research, I've realized that the biggest thing missing in our lives to demyth all these limiting beliefs is self-love. And I do believe that we don't know how to love ourselves. But if we do, it changes the game. And you, I can tell already by chatting with you and the things that you're doing and the things that you've said, you've locked into that. And it's probably transformed the way that you show up.
Yes, and change the things that like you said, things change in your life. And I always used to be, when I started the business, I wanted to be so successful and have all this money and buy a really big house and have the Range Rover and all that stuff. And then my kids turned 18 and I was like, do I though?
Yeah.
And so I started doing the things that I wanted to do and showing up the way I want to show up. And it did take that. And I'm going to cry because my son called me the other day. He's 19.
Yeah.
And he told me that I was a really good mom. Oh, if it's what you want.
Yeah.
It is. Sorry.
No.
No, not sorry.
Yeah, you're not sorry.
No. And he was like, and the reason why he said this is because he had just broken up with a girl. And he was like, telling me all of the things that he didn't think was that they were raised right. And he was like, you did it. He's like, you had to have help from me and my sisters, but you did it.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank you. Because that's all that matters, right?
It gives me a full body, all down my legs, goosebumps. I mean, that's all you can ask for as a parent, right? Is you did it.
Right.
And it also probably makes you appreciate the mess and the hard work and all of the grind and the tears and the blood and the sweat leading up to it, because now you know it was all worth it, right?
It was, absolutely. And I I was not a perfect mom. I'm still not a perfect mom.
Nobody
and I'm okay
is.
with that.
Yeah.
But the fact that my 19-year-old son told me that he has noticed a difference in other people and that he thinks he was raised right, and he even said, "You raise your kids to be successful," and I was like, "Thank you." You know, that's really. I'm just gonna stop crying.
No, that's amazing. I mean, you can go to bed at night knowing that you've done everything that you could ever want to do. Right? Is you've fostered that within him, and you didn't even know intentionally what you were doing. Right? This is by you showing up, who you are. You made decisions. You separated from people that you needed to. You leaned in. You found who you were, and you've loved yourself. And that is what he's watched. Is you showing up, doing the right things, which we often don't even know that we're showing our children.
Yeah, my mom, when I was a kid, she used to say this to me all the time. She'd say that children learn by they live, not what they learn, what you try to teach them. So, like, if you're living a certain lifestyle, that's what the kid's going to learn. And it was always stuck in my head because I'm like, I don't want my kids to have a shitty life, a bad childhood. I don't want them to have the same experience as I did. So that kind of made me realize what was important, what was rubber and what was not. And I was like, the glass things are making sure that my kids don't feel about me the same way I feel about my mother.
Yeah.
And that was important to me, and that's been my whole focus.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
huge.
you.
And I think too is a lot of moms struggle. Going back to the mom guilt, they think that, again, we're focusing on the time that we don't get with them. So as someone who works multiple jobs and I travel a lot for work, I've really had to work on, here I am, I'm leaving actually tomorrow and I'm not getting home till Friday night for a work trip. Could I be sulking and I'm a terrible mom? Yeah, but I'm not, right? This is, A, they're watching you. They're watching your hard work. But B, is knowing that you can travel for work and still raise kids that feel unconditionally loved. And you can grind it out and you can build a career and prioritize yourself and your hobbies and still be a present parent. You can. It's not an either or. And I think a lot of moms are like, oh, well, if I'm over here, then I can't be present. No, you can. Because again, it's about how you're showing up in the time you have with them. How many times are we surrounded by friends or family and we're heads down on our phone, right? Checking the emails. Right? We all slip into it. It's life, right? It's hard to set boundaries with devices, but if you can, I think that you start appreciating the fact that you can be a mother and still be present, and you can still raise kids like you did that feel unconditionally loved.
And I was a single parent the entire time, and that's one of those things. I mean, yes, I was married, but I was still, the brief period of time that I was married, I was still a single parent. I was the only one there. I was the one showing up for them and making sure that they felt like I was there.
Yeah.
So it's just more proof that if you put your mind to it and you this is your priorities, the results will be there.
Yeah.
And I feel that way. Because as a single parent, I feel probably more guilt than I should. Because
we all do, sure.
Yeah. And only because I'm like, oh, well, if there was more family, if there was more. But it's like, if there was more, how would that have shaped who they are?
Exactly.
I don't think that my daughter would start a business. Let me just start there.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for her watching me do it for the last 4 years and being right by my side, no, if I would have had a job, I would have been like, okay, you'll go to college and get a job, which I'm not saying nothing negative. I went to college too, but I see that drive in her, and I'm trying to, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you see the spark into somebody and you're trying to ignite it, fan the flames.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, let's do this.
And not only has she watched you show up, she's watched you mess up. Right?
So many times.
But that shows her that okay, I can do it too. I can mess up. You left a toxic relationship. And you said your son called you and said he had what? Left a relationship.
He also left a very toxic relationship.
Good for him.
And he watched me leave that one.
Yeah.
Because to back all of this up, whenever I first decided to leave the relationship, I didn't have a job. And I thought, oh, well, I need a job in order to support it. So I allowed it to come back into my life for 1 year. And then the second that I just got up and was tired of my own bullshit, as the way I'm going to put it, I was like, no, we're putting a stop to this. I started a company. Gotta go.
Amazing.
And that was the same thing with him, is that he even said to me, he's like, it took me a minute to realize what the red flags were. And I was like, you took shorter amount of time than I did.
Yeah.
So maybe I did fuck up, but I didn't.
Yeah, you didn't fuck up at all. And I think a lot of toxic relationships, it's almost this it's slight, right? It's in some cases, and you don't know what's happening, right? So it's like the analogy of boiling a frog. You drop the frog in the boiling water, it hops out. But if you slowly increase it 1 degree, the frog doesn't know. So a lot of times we're in these relationships, whether it be spouse, partner, friends, that it eats at you in little tiny ways, and then it really does exactly that. And it's eating at your personality, and it's making you show up in a different way. So the fact that he watched you navigate that, and he's only 19 and he's already making those decisions is extremely powerful. So that's incredible that he's kind of fostered that.
It makes me feel very proud as a parent. It's like, and you never really know how good of a parent you are until, I don't want to say they're done because they're never done. It's a continuing relationship, but once they're an adult and you start transforming that because you go to more of a guidance position, and then you're like, oh, like I guess I did pretty good because they're making good decisions and they're asking me for advice and they're recognizing bad patterns, and I'm like, cool.
Yeah, and that probably makes it easier to let them go, right? Like to go into life, then you're not helicoptering them because you don't trust them. You trust them because you've seen the decisions that they're already making in their teenage years, and you're like, you know what? Okay, I've done my job. Now go experience life, which is going to allow them to lean in and make mistakes and know that you're there, not paving the way, but you're there almost as like a fallback cushion when they need you, and that's going to make them very successful.
That is one thing that they don't tell you when you have children is when they become adults.
Give me all the advice.
Oh my god, it was the most...
I'm in the chaos.
Yeah, which is great. And you will miss it. I do miss it. There are days that I'm like, man, I wish you were in a diaper still. But at the same time, I am like, you have no idea. It's like they're out in the world and they're making decisions and you're like, is it gonna, oh my god, like I'm literally on the edge. But then everything's okay. So it's taken a little bit of time and him living on his own for me to be like, but oh my god, they don't tell you that when you have kids. So one day they're just
there's no manual period for any of it.
It's so frustrating.
I know. I will say when it comes to kids too, there's a lot we can learn from them. So when we talk about messing up and falling and, you know, experiencing life, the best example of this is toddlers, right? I've got a 3-year-old downstairs that you know, green boogers and probably a poopy butt, but watching them learn to, you know, it's cliche, right? The walking and the falling down and the riding the bike. And I showed that picture of Riley. I got this video. I'm like, all right, Riley, it's your first time riding a bike. And before I even finished the sentence, she like fell over and started screaming. Within 6 minutes, was back on that bike and rode it without training wheels by herself, right? And potty training. Kids are similar to parents. We are navigating new challenges hourly, it feels like.
Yes.
And we don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we are doing. So you can learn a lot by just watching. Kids don't care about being judged by anybody else. Look at the way they dress and the way they act and the way they like show up. They don't give a shit what anybody thinks about them. So power to that. I love it. They fall down, they get right back up. They don't have these judgmental fears. So really leaning into that has been monumental and just allowing it to happen and learning from them.
No, absolutely. And that reminds me, so I have a little one. She's 9, right?
Yes.
And I feel like...
She's the firecracker?
Oh my god, yes. And I feel like her seeing all of the transitions that I've made and like how brave I was to like leave her father and, you know, do all this. Yeah. She'll tell me straight to my face, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I don't care what these people at school think. She does not... Like, it doesn't faze her. Yeah. She'll go to school with 2 different socks on. She used to wear a uniform, right? Yeah. And I love that. And she'll tuck it in and pull it all the way up here. She's like, I don't care. I'm wearing my uniform. I'm good to go. I got 2 different socks on. I'm like, girl.
She's going to run this world.
She is, because she does not care. And you can tell her, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that, you know, whatever it is, because people will what. She's like, I don't care if they make fun of me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that speaks to you, right? Because she's watched you show up authentically as yourself and lean into the pieces and the parts about you. So she's already doing that at 9, which is phenomenal and is going to be fearless. My daughter is very similar, and she'll run the world, but she's so hard to parent.
Yes!
Yeah, like, right, I get that when you're older. Like, put your damn shoes on, we have to go to school.
Yeah, that has been fun. So I got a therapist because I was like, and I learned something. If you ask a question, they can't argue with that. And I was like, okay. So if I'm like,
so simple.
Yeah, like, put your shoes on. No, it's like, hey, can you put your shoes on? Yeah, I can do it.
Okay. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, I learned that the other day, and I was like, oh, well, I've been.
But can you nap? Can you wipe your own butt?
See, exactly. And then they'll just, yes, I can, watch me. Watching.
I feel like Riley's like, yeah, but I don't wanna.
Okay, so we have the same child.
Yeah.
She's like Coraline. I can.
Yeah, I can, but I don't care.
Right? And I'm like, I love you to death.
Yes, so hard, but so great.
So can we talk about some of the challenges that you have faced trying to pivot away from being all these things? I know you're juggling a lot. So let's talk, first of all, let's talk about what you're all juggling.
Okay, so I work full-time right now. I'm an account executive selling cybersecurity software. On top of that, mom of 2 under 6. On top of that, I am a speaker. So you've seen me speak on stage. Also hosted women's wellness and empowerment events, which are amazing because it's fusing
Fantastic.
mind and body, right? I think so many conferences focus on mindset and success habits, but there's a huge piece missing, which is how are you treating yourself? I always love the word fuel. Fuel isn't just what you're putting in your body, it's how you're treating your body, right? So you've done Joss's breath work, the grounding, any of these pieces are integral. So back to your question, and then of course on top of that, I'm a success coach. So I help overwhelmed high achievers regain balance and achieve their goals by unlocking fearless confidence. So I have a framework I run them through. First one being identity. So we talked a little bit about really finding out who you are at a deep level, walking into your legacy. So what is that legacy that you want to leave behind? Stripping away the negative self-talk and all of the mental barriers that we have up. Next is surrounding yourself with the right people. And the last one is healthy habits. So habits being time management, productivity, health being an integral piece, which I won't nerd out on like cycle syncing and wellness and all that, but that is a core piece of it, right? And I always say, you can know who you are and, know where you're going and have a really resilient mindset, but if you're not surrounding yourself with the right people, or if you're not treating your body well, true transformation can't happen. So that's what I do. That's my passion, my why. And then as far as my biggest obstacle would be, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, you can too, is how do you work full time while running a side business, while having a kid, and prioritizing your health, yourself, and your relationships? So it's really, I would say, it's not that you need more time, it's that you need more clarity on how to spend your time. So if you follow me on social, I'm up at 5:15 in the morning because I love to. It's not like I have to do this. I love getting up early, getting a jump start on time without my children. Like, I always feel reactive and like running behind when my kids wake me up. I need that time for myself to get centered and focused on the day. And in the mornings, I'm working on scaling my business, and then working full time, and of course traveling for work makes it a little bit difficult. And then being kind to myself and just saying, you know what, if you miss dinner because you are at a networking event or have a coaching call, that's okay. You're still a present parent. You're still, again, raising kids that are unconditionally loved. So I think for me is the time, is how do you manage it all? And a lot of times it's hard to really scale your business while you're working full time. Mm-hmm. So making those decisions of what does that look like? What about for you? What was the biggest challenge you faced?
Can we
go ahead?
It's okay. We talk a lot, and that's great. And we're back.
And scene.
So one of the biggest challenges that I personally face is I have ADHD, so I try to juggle all of the balls at the same time without realizing which ones are rubber, which ones are not. And this is just me. I have had to, and I don't want to use the word fail, but I have tripped over my own feet more than once. So I'm making sure that I put the things that are absolutely necessary, and then everything else falls into place.
Yeah.
Because that is something that it's taken me a long time, just as an adult in general.
Absolutely.
Because I went through my whole life like hamster wheeling it. Get up. I used to, when my children were little, I was a teen parent. Highly recommend it. The only reason I say that is because I am 38 years old and I have a 9-year-old. I'm so tired. Listen, I don't know. I had so much energy then. I was working 2 jobs. I was taking them to school. I was taking my son to his therapies. Like,
I was single parent. You had me at single parenting, first of all. Like, that sounds exhausting. Yes.
It was, absolutely. And I kept like, oh my God, how am I going to make all of this work? And I didn't have any help. And it was just absolutely frustrating. And then that's when I started peeling back the layers and being like, okay, what is the most important priority? What am I going to feel like when I die? Am I going to be happy with the life that I'm leading?
Yeah.
No.
What triggered you to have these such insightful reflections?
I think, honestly, losing the life that I thought I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's what it was, because I was married, I had the house, I had the kids, I had the car, I stayed at home. And I was like, okay, one minute I had it, the next minute it was absolutely gone, and it was all on me. And I was like, wait a second, is this even, like, is this what I want? Is this what I'm doing? What is going on? And there was a lot of crying and screaming.
Yeah.
A lot of reframing, a lot of therapy, a lot of realizing that what I want wasn't matching up to what I was doing.
Mm-hmm. It's the cognitive dissonance, right? And you realize it because it's, in whatever form it shows up in your life, but it's almost like this unevenness.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm doing these things. And they always say, too, is how many famous people are out there who have all the cars and all the money and all the women and all they're traveling, but they're so unfulfilled and so unhappy. And it's because they're chasing the wrong things, right? Or they're leaning into their talents, but they're not using them to serve other people. So there's this dissonance between success and passion.
Yes.
So how do you fuse these two? So it's great that you did the work to recognize that.
Yeah, it took a lot, and I'm very proud to say, like, I made that before it was too late, is the words I want to use, because sometimes you can retire, like my dad, for example, and that was one thing that really kind of drove me too. I watched my dad work for the government, repairing black boxes, his entire life.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And the only thing he would ever talk about is my retirement. That's all I'm looking forward to. And he was not happy. And so he actually ran a side business where he had rentals. And even in that, he wasn't necessarily fulfilled.
Yeah.
And now that he's retired, he's out traveling, he's enjoying life. And those are the things that really make him happy. And parents are a good example, you know, and you just look at it and I was like, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah.
I know that I may not have a retirement. That's okay. Whatever.
But we're living every day fulfilled, right? Instead of waiting, right? I'll be happy when I retire, when I get the car, when all of these things. And, you know, one thing that you had mentioned before is shifting, you know, which you at the time were treating them all as glass. It's also okay when they change. So in every version of yourself, and new versions, new chapters of your past could be a traumatic incident, it could be a divorce, it could be any experience, your kids moving out, any big life event that changes who you are, you have to reassess. So locking into who you are and your identities and your legacy is great. But you have to constantly, every quarter almost, lock back in and say, is this what I really want? But it's incredible that you were able to recognize that in your father, right? And be like, I love this quote that says, stop living every week for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
How often are we like, oh, happy Monday, you know, like, it's like Tuesday, right? Like, we just, like, dread the week. What we're looking forward to is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, but why? That shouldn't be the life that we live. We need to find ways to insert, and I'm not saying it's realistic to, like, love every single second of every single day. I mean, whoever has that, tell me all the secrets, but
honestly.
yeah.
Have you tried drugs?
But it's finding the little ways. And there's always going to be things in your day that set you off. You can have the most perfect day planned and, like, kid gets sick or someone ticks you off or road rage, you know, all these things. It's just going into it and being like, you know what, I'm fulfilled. I love myself. I found peace. I'm beautifully whole. I'm just going to do these things that sprinkle in joy. And that's all you can ask for. But finding that and being intentional about putting that into your day. And so many people don't do that.
No, that's what I was going to say. I get really excited and I jump into it, so that's ADHD, not apologizing. So that's one of those things, and I used to be an angry rage driver. I don't drive anymore. I have a driver, guys. I'm so lucky the last 3 years.
You've made it. That's when you know.
So exactly. So get yourself a driver, and then you can be scrolling on social media and be like, oh, that's an asshole. Cool. Because that's what I do. But it was those things that were making me unhappy too. It was the driving to work and the, you know, all of the things that I just wasn't happy, wasn't fulfilled. And I started thinking about, if I die,
here we are, back to this.
It's always back to this. Because I know it's morbid, but you should think about that.
You should, yes.
Because when I die, who's going to come to my funeral? I have a very small list. And I'm okay with that because those are the people in the front row. Yeah. That's the quality.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. and I want to be happy, and I want to do the things that make me happy, and I just don't care what anyone thinks anymore.
It's all that matters.
And it took a long time to get there.
And you got there, which is the amazing part. Not only did you get there, but your kids watched you get there. And now they're getting there. And they're not getting there at 34, 35, 50s. They're getting there at 18, 9, right? Like, so everything that you're doing has an impact, positive impact on your kids. So, I mean, I just encourage everybody to continuously look inward, find those things, explore them. If they don't work, great, move on to the next thing. It's not line dancing, it's something else. Or step, or any of these things. It's just the exploration. You know, it's so cliche to be like, fall in love with the journey, but it is so true. And you hear about these professional athletes that their entire life, they're like, I just want to win a Super Bowl. And then they win the Super Bowl and they go into depression because they don't know what's next. You know, you set these goals, and having goals is great. But if you don't enjoy the journey of the steps that you're taking to get them, when you achieve them, then you lose who you are. You've tied your identity to a result and not the actions that it's taking to get there. So constantly reassessing and saying, what pathway am I on? All right, let's try it. If not, shift, fall on my face, move over here, but always be moving forward. And people see that and they admire that. They see you showing up. They see you constantly posting. They see you having interviews and putting yourself out there and getting uncomfortable, right? And allowing yourself to forget equipment and do all the things and talk about it and laugh about it, right?
That's
Is
true.
people look at that and they admire you. So know, too, in doing that, you're inspiring people.
I'm
So
hoping to.
you are. And the thing is that we talked about before is those are the things that aren't tracked. You can't measure on Instagram how many lives you impacted, right? How many
That's true.
people were changed their mindset because of something that you said or something on the interview. That's what you have to go home at night and be like, you know what? Okay, I did that. And know it in there.
No, that's absolutely correct. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I realized that we say, no, yeah, a lot.
I say right so much. I've probably done it like 900 times. But I didn't know it until I watched myself talk. Was that mine? Probably.
Yeah. No, that's like what's so humbling too is doing the podcast and watching myself and seeing like and I used to be so like, do I look? But now I'm like, you know what? This is who I am. I'm comfortable. I sometimes am in pain and I gotta squirm a little bit, but it's fine.
And people see it and they're like, oh, she's being her, right?
Yeah.
It's like they see the authenticity and they will connect with you better when they see you showing up that way. It's, you know, those videos of, do you remember like during COVID times when these girls would get on their selfies and they'd be like, oh my God, I just woke up. I look like crap today. And they're like beautifully curled hair, like perfect face of makeup. I'm like, first of all, I hate you because that's not realistic. And then we'd compare ourselves and be like, well, I don't look like that when I get older, right? It's like, I like the girl who's got the messy bun with half an eye done of makeup and the other crusty hair and like boogers on her shirt. I'm like, that, I can relate to that.
Exactly.
Like, I don't care what you're saying, but I trust you because you're putting yourself out there and you're showing up who you are and you don't care what other people think about you. That's when real connection's made, which is exactly what you do.
Yes, I try to be as authentic as possible, just because I learned my lesson not being it, honestly, and I want to attract the right people, and I hope that the right people, this reaches the right people.
Yeah.
Guys, gotta let me know in the comments below. But let's talk about your ideal client. Who is your ideal client?
Oh, that's a great question. So back in the day, I used to call in all overwhelmed women, right? Because they tell you you need to niche down, and I never took the advice, and I was like, what do you know? And then made that mistake. I call in overwhelmed high achievers. So I'll give you an example. One of my mentors said for a marketing slogan, you could say, are you tired going up the stairs and feeling winded? Or number 2, are you tired from walking up the stairs feeling winded although you keep going to the gym? Right? You see the difference is number 2, you're calling in the people that are putting in the work. The people that know, okay, these are the steps I need to do. It's just not working. You just need to tweak. You need more protein. You need this, this, and this. So what I realized in my journey is they always say you coach your younger self, is coaching high achievers who are almost to burnout. So quick fact on myself, I coach women to avoid burnout because I have been there. So 2 times in my past, not 1, but 2, have developed in stress-induced autoimmune diseases. 2 completely separate ones. I think I showed a slide at the conference, but one of them, my fingers would literally turn blue. It was like the grossest thing ever. I'd get blue circles around my ankles. I was going through a really, really difficult season of life, and it was stress-induced. And it was affecting how I showed up, my entire body, all of the things, because they always say your body will keep count and your body will
God, it
win.
does.
Even though you suppress it, you keep going, you keep going. And so I struggled with that, put tools in place to overcome it. 2 years later, I found myself in the same place because I'm just like you, a high achiever, right? You're going, going, going. You're putting them all as glass. You're going 150% at all the priorities that we're doing, and it affects you. So I call in people who are almost to that point or at that point and teach them the tools to put in a place to avoid burnout, to be a high achiever and be happy doing it. And the people that are putting in the work, not the people who are like, hey, I'm really miserable and I want to be happier, right? Of course I can help you, but true transformation comes when you have the oomph behind you to put the work in, because it is, you know, you've done it.
Yeah.
It's hard. It pushes you. It makes you uncomfortable. There's a lot
very.
of tears. There's a lot of peeling pieces of you you did not know existed. And to do that with someone you have to trust. So I call in people who are ready to do that and are open and want to unlock their inner badass and fearless confidence.
Which I love this. Sorry, I took a moment because I was like, yes, I love in my head. I forgot to say it out loud. Sometimes I do that. It's part of the
I like
ADHD.
pauses.
I'm like, yes. That's processing. But you're absolutely correct. It is a lot of work, and it's something that you have to want. And this is just from my own personal experience. When I was a young child, I noticed there's a lot of drug addicts in my life, and one of the things that the counselors would always say is that they have to want the help, and I think it's the same way with people coming to you. They have to want it, because you can't force it on them. Like, you can't make someone happy. You gotta be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And it sucks, guys. It really does, but do it, because then you could be like me.
Because what is the result, right? What is the outcome? That you're living a happy, fulfilled life, that you're still juggling all the priorities, but you're enjoying the journey. That's the end result. That's the value you get out of it. So I think, too, is understanding the transformation and articulating that, and also showing it, right? Like, this is who I am. This is the life I live. Come be a part of this. And I'm going to be growing with you. I'm like, I have all the answers. Come listen to me. I'm like, hey, let's navigate this together, right? Because each piece and part is new. It's not like in this space you have it figured out. First of all, nobody has it figured out. But second of all, it's constantly changing. So allowing, and then two is the community that's built. So my style of coaching is not just one-on-one. I do a hybrid of one-on-one and group. So I'm bringing all these high achievers together, and we're getting on calls together, and we're working through things together. And there's tears, there's work being done, but I've been a part of these courses in the past, and I'm still very close with the women from years ago that I went through that with. So it's the bond that you create and that community, the front row that you're building of other supportive, badass women navigating something different. They're all in different seasons of their life. They're navigating similar pieces. So I love that piece of it. It's not just one-on-one coaching. It's a community being built.
I think it's really important, too, because one-on-one can feel, I don't want to say the word overwhelming, but just somewhere in that realm.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, I'm going to sit down and tell you what's wrong with me. Right. But if I'm doing it alone, it's going to feel like, oh, I'm a teacher and this is the principal. No, like, it's a group of us, and we're all fucking up, and we're all like, we need to get something better.
And we're here, right? It's just showing up and being supportive when someone else is going through a really tough time in that session. It's that support, is they're lifting her up, and then when she goes through something, everybody's lifting her up, and it's this constant, shared community of support, which I think is fascinating. And I always tell my clients, I'm like, look, I don't want to be the therapist that you need every single week. I want to help you get the tools so that you can go out and be successful without me. I want to bring you in, give you everything I know. We're going to try different things, because with everything, it's not like one formula fits every person, right?
No.
It's, we got to tweak this. Like, here's an overarching framework. Let's dive in and figure out what exactly you need. Constantly assessing the wheel of life, right? Where are you in your family, your finances, your spirituality, your hobbies, your personal development, and what areas just need a little bit of tweaks. But I always say I want to equip you with the tools so that you don't need me. You only need me for a little amount of time, and then I get to watch you go out into the world and continue crushing it and being a badass, because
I love that.
that inspires me, right? I don't want to be something that you need forever. I just want to motivate the shit out of you, and then you go do your thing.
And just be a part of them forever in here
Yeah.
and up here.
And I'm always there, right? I will be with people for years of their journey. It's just I'm not needed as a crux. So I love that.
That's great. I never thought about that. Yeah. So tell us where everyone can find you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So my handle is Resilience Rewired. Name comes from resilience, obviously being a key quality that I want everybody to embody, and rewire because you can rewire your brain. Repetition and consistency, you can reprogram all of the negative limiting beliefs, and so Resilience Rewired. So resilience.rewired on Instagram. And then I am right now in my coaching program, and I will have another 7-week hybrid. It's with one-on-one and group coaching launching in February. So stay tuned.
Ooh, I'm so excited. And we will share that information with the episode so people can connect with you. I'm really
Sorry. This happened last time too. I was like, I
Right
can't
at the
stop
end.
it. Go ahead.
It's okay. You're good.
take a drink.
This is a part of it. This should be in it.
So, like, just guys, the videographer over there is coughing, and it's okay.
That's right.
We have talked so much. She's so inspired. Super inspired. Blooper reel. Okay.
We need bloopers. Bloopers are important.
I cannot wait to share that. I'm like so excited about this. All right, are we good?
Make sure you get the one of me sticking my butt in the air. That was a good one.
Is this live, guys? You're gonna see all the fun things that happen. So I just want to thank you so much for doing this interview today, and I cannot wait to share you with all of my listeners and have you possibly come back in a year and you can update us on all the progress that you have made.
Yes. Well, thank you. First of all, I'm just so proud of you for everything that you're doing. You have an incredible podcast, and you're putting yourself out there. You're doing amazing. You're impacting lives, and I'm just very appreciative that you would have me on here, and thank you.
It was great.
Yeah.
And just so everybody knows that we met at the Women's Empowerment
Conference.
conference.
Yeah.
Wow, my brain just stopped for a second. It's fine. And I met her, and I, for some reason, was really attracted to her energy. I just kept watching her, and I was like, why do I just want to talk to you? So after it, this also to keep in mind, when she was on stage, everything kept going haywire.
Speaking of messing up, and that was a big technical difficulty one.
Absolutely. And it was one of those things that I was like, that's why I'm drawn to her, because even though all of these things are going on, she still kept her cool. She was like, this is what it is. All right, moving on. And it wasn't like, oh my God, sorry guys. It was complete confidence. And that's what she gives to her clients. So go look her up. Follow her on Instagram. Are you also on Facebook and TikTok?
I am not. No, limited to Instagram for now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I feel you on that. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. So go follow her, and thank you guys for watching another amazing episode of Down Home Dirt. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.